Hi guys, welcome back to Bee's Speed Shop. So this weekend I'm going to be working on my repair panel I wanted to make for a section in the rear of the floor. So my plan is to make a wooden buck or mould so that I can hammer form the edge where it steps in a bit like that. And a couple of the strengthening channels as well. I'd like to try and hammer form a little bit of those so that when I actually weld in the repair section it all matches up nicely and looks the same. But before I can start work on that, my parts have arrived that I ordered, so I need to find somewhere else to store those for now. So I've made myself a quick cardboard template. I know it's not perfect and square and everything, but I just wanted to know the position of this step-in piece and where all these strengthening pieces were. So what I plan on doing is using the square corner edge of my piece of wood, just to make sure everything's square. I just needed to know the depth of this, how wide it was, and where they were in position with these strengthening channel pieces. So I'm going to just mark out in pencil roughly around this piece for those pieces, but I'm going to extend the actual piece I make a little bit on either end anyway, just so I've got enough room that I can put some nuts and bolts through there with some big washers just to clamp all together when I have my piece of material in between. So I'm going to quickly mark out all these with the pencil and then what I'll do is I'll come back in with the ruler and neaten everything up to make sure it's in the right position and make sure these are the right width as well. So I've quickly traced around my cardboard template on my first piece I'm going to cut out, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come back with the ruler and actually make sure these all measure what they're supposed to. I've got a few measurements that I wrote down here the other day, so I'm just going to quickly double check. I'm going to neaten up this line, probably make these square as well and make them all the same width. So I think that one's slightly wider, so I'm just going to go through and double check all this now. So I've gone over all of my measurements and just drawn all the lines out a bit neater, and I've measured these to make sure they're all in the right place. So you can see my template lines were a little bit off, but I've measured them and got them all in the right place now, so I'm happy with that. And I've extended it either end slightly, just so I've got enough to clamp down either end. So what I'm going to do is use my piece of box tube that I've got left over. So I've just roughly measured that from that edge, so I know that I can run the edge of my jigsaw along there, so I can cut this outside edge. So I'm just going to clamp that in place and cut that out, and I'll clamp it in place and cut that edge, and then I can come back and cut out all these little pieces for the reinforcement channels on the floor, and then cut out that little step piece as well. So I've started to rough cut my buck or mould. I've done both pieces, and what I did to make sure, because these two edges and these two edges were actually the edges of the piece of my board, so I knew that they were both square. So what I did is, once I got this piece cut out, I lined it up along this edge and along this edge, clamped it together, and I drilled a couple of holes and bolted it together so I knew that those two edges were still square together. I did try to use my jigsaw. I don't know if you can see just there. The actual, as I was coming along trying to cut into it, the blade was pulling in this way into my piece, so I had to stop using that, and what I used instead was just a old saw. So I had to do it by hand, but it didn't take too long, just a couple minutes just to cut out those two edges. So I can just sort of clean those up. I don't necessarily need to clean them up actually, I just need to cut out these pieces and cut that piece out, and then it's pretty much ready to use. So I've drilled all my holes for my wooden buck now, for all like my clamping nuts and bolts. Slight miscalculation on the washers though. I am, I think, 8 short, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 short actually. So I can have a washer either side. So I need to get another pack of them. Luckily they're not too expensive. I think they're like £2, £3 something for a pack of 10. So I'll pick up another pack of those at some point to finish this. One other thing I should point out, I know when I put my piece of metal in there I am going to have to drill the holes for all of these clamps, but I'm fine with that because the hole punch I was using is roughly the same size as these nuts and bolts, so I should be able to just, I've collected all the little circle punch pieces, so I should just be able to put them in there and then just give them a little weld, just to weld up the holes where they are once I've formed the panel. But I won't stop here for now. I'll see if I can clean up these edges and sort of neaten them up so that I can then at least try a practice panel. I've also got to make my form tool. I'll see if I can get like a piece of solid bar or something and just shape the end so it's the same as the actual panel in the floor, so I can then just hammer in those little channels. So I'm going to try and get these neatened up for now, and then I'll see where I'm at. So I've done a bit of work on my buck or mould now, just to neaten up all these edges, which I think look quite nice now. And I've got a piece of the old floor here just as like a gauge, just to roughly see, to make sure they all line up, and they all line up pretty good, so I'm quite happy with how that's come out. I've got a little bit more work to do on this top bit just to get this right, but I think what I'm going to do before I actually make the panel is cut out the part on the floor and just see if it would fit in this, and just see if it like folds over this edge, and if they line up in here, just so I know if I need to like take some more of this out or open these up a bit more, then I'd be able to do so. So I've been doing a bit more work on my buck or mould just to get it right, and I've made a little template of what my hammer tool, press tool needs to look like. So I checked this piece in the actual offcut of the floor I've got, and that all lines up quite nicely, so I know if I get a piece of round bar or a piece of square stock, then I need to just grind that shape on there, so then it fits down in there and it makes that form of the little reinforcing channel. So I'm quite happy with that. Just made a little template. What I could do is, where I've cut it out there, just because that was the width of the piece of card I had, I just trimmed it to fit in there. But what I could do is, if I have a piece of material which is wider than this gap, I could grind up to a certain point, so I know I can hammer this down in, and then when it hits on the top edge there, then I know it's the right depth. That's something to keep in mind when I'm looking for a piece of material at some point. So I'm going to be leaving this video here for now. I'm happy I was able to get my wooden buck mould piece made today. I would have made it out of some thicker material, but that 1/4 inch piece was just the piece I had lying around. So I decided to use it and see if it would work for what I needed. Hopefully it should last long enough. Those little reinforcing channels in the floor, they're only about 7 or 8 mil deep, so hopefully it should last long enough just to form those and form that little step-in edge piece. So I'm going to pick this up next weekend when I've got a bit more time. I'm going to see if I can get a piece of material to make my hammer mould, and then I can cut the old piece of the floor out, make sure that the mould fits, and then I can cut a piece of fresh metal out and start forming the replacement patch. So thanks for watching this video.